Hi everyone, I'm Al.
And I'm Soleil. You're listening to Island Echoes podcast by Sustainable Cayman, where we discuss everything from culture to politics.
Today we're going to be talking with the ambassadors Hayley and Rickeem on the Rising Tides Departing Shores report released by Sustainable Cayman and One Planet last month. Ambassadors, could you please introduce yourselves?
Hi guys, I'm Rickeem. I'm a youth ambassador for Sustainable Cayman. Joined last year, enjoying it pretty much so far. It's great being with everybody, meeting everyone, and doing what we can for the Cayman Islands. And for I guess sustainability of the entire Caribbean. If we lead by example, people will see what we're doing, and hopefully we lead this whole region for the better.
Hi, I'm Hayley Roulstone. I'm the campaign support officer here at Sustainable Cayman, and I work closely on the Wetlands Thrive, Life Survives campaign, and I was honored to help with this report in addition to that.
That's great. Thank you guys. For those who haven't read the report, could you summarize generally the contents that can be found in the report?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, this report is essentially a discussion piece, sort of to start a conversation in the UK about the challenges the British Overseas Territories are facing with regards to the climate crisis. We take a lens at our own islands here in the Cayman Islands because we don't really see any conversations being had about the issues of sea level rise and the potential problems that could face down the line with regards to mass migration and us losing basically our home to these impacts, whether it comes from, more intense storm surges and these more intense, weather events that cause us to lose much more of our infrastructure than previously, experienced before, or just sea level rise in general, encroaching on the land that we have available now. So what happens when we lose this land? Who is going to essentially look out for us? And how do we actually start this conversation about planning and preparing? Because everyone speaks about the precautionary approach, where you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail, sort of thing. So we're not seeing anything at the highest level in terms of like the ministries of core government in the UK or even within our own government about this very real problem that we can see in other similar islands across the world. Pacific Islands being the strongest example. So our report was basically us compiling all of this information here locally with regards to like traditions that could be lost or, housing infrastructure and many other facets of like the livelihood and lives of Caymanians and how, what are you essentially doing to address this? So the report is basically a discussion piece to start the conversation around those things.
For sure. I think that starting those discussions is really important, especially when it's something a lot of people haven't been exposed to yet.
Yeah, exactly.
I just wanted to add, we were lucky enough to have two of our ambassadors present our report to MPs at the highest level at the House of Commons. So we've started to put the report on the map. We're trying to get Cayman on the map and other small islands that could be in a similar situation, and we want to create collaboration across the Caribbean.
Yes. The idea of small islands but big nations. So how did all of this come about, and what initiated this collaboration between Sustainable Cayman and One Planet to create the report?
So a couple of the youth ambassadors from Sustainable Cayman actually went to COP28, and Connor, who was one of our youth ambassadors, met with Puran Desai, someone who's been working in the sustainability space for over 30 years. And he actually had a hand in actually what became the SDGs that the UN uses today. And essentially with his like wealth of expertise, Connor asked, looking at our situation in the Cayman Islands, which is increasingly similar to like the Pacific Islands where they're losing their land due to sea level rise and intense storms, what would you say could be a solution for our islands? And surprisingly, he said this was the first time in his 30 years of working in this space with sustainability that he was stumped on a question of how to like immediately look at something and see what a solution could be. He said he didn't really see any solutions for the Cayman Islands. They connected though. They took details with one another, and we followed up with this sort of line of thought. And he actually did feel that this should be taken higher. So he suggested we write a report, basically pleading our case. Not even like pleading our case, but essentially sharing this story, these issues that aren't really being spoken about, because they aren't being spoken about by the people who actually have the expertise and have the power to actually make change. Then nothing won't happen, or nothing will happen. So this report essentially was the brainchild of obviously Puran and our organization, just trying to figure out how to get that conversation started in the places that need to be started. So yeah, started from COP28, us reaching out to him and his expertise, and then following up. This report was kind of created or started.
Yeah. So when you guys went into the beginning of the report, what was the planned impact or purpose?
Our purpose in starting this report was to start the conversation and have a document that outlines an action plan of what the Cayman Islands could do in terms of sea level rise. And I'm passionate about sea level rise and its importance, so that's why I got involved. But of course, we want it to just be a conversation starter. We want people to get involved. We want this to be a collaborative effort with Caymanians for Caymanians. And I think it's important to note that and to share with people, this is not the plan. This is the plan that we have come up with, and we want input.
Yeah, I've definitely seen some confusion coming up around the report on, who it was made for, what the plan is, but it's very important to highlight that this plan was just to get that discussion started.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, as the data was being compiled and you got further insights for the report, were there any surprising discoveries or revelations that significantly impacted your understanding of the environmental challenges facing the Cayman Islands, either today or in the future?
Yeah, one that was really kind of eye-opening for me is that, going through just all of the, physical impacts of the climate crisis, looking at how those actually intersect with like actual daily life, like things that actually impact Caymanians on the ground. Like the most eye-opening one was the housing issues that we have here, and how that could potentially exasperate exacerbate like the issues with our housing, also a housing crisis that we have right now, where not only are so many of these places unaffordable for us, but looking at how we could lose more land, and that prevents us from building more to accommodate for the influx of people or the influx of Caymanians that will be born in the future and whatnot. It's very scary to see how that immediately prices out a whole demographic of people within the islands. So seeing it as how like that was something that probably people don't even really associate readily with the climate crisis in the Cayman Islands, it was something that I really wanted to shine light on, because to the regular person, to the person who doesn't even really know anything about, say for instance, sea level rise or greenhouse gases, they do know about housing and where they're going to live and where their families are going to live. So that I feel like that was something that could immediately connect a lot of people from different backgrounds. No matter where you are, you're living on this island, you need somewhere to stay. You could lose all of that, or it can be increasingly hard for, like, say for instance, your kids to continue living as you did. So yeah, that was something interesting that I found while looking at the data and going through the information for this report.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, Rickeem. I think that's really well said. And it's interesting because I feel like housing is so intricately entwined with the setback limit on the coastlines. And again, because I'm interested in sea level rise and the impacts on the community, I think the dismissal of setback limits and the fact that we're seeing a large amount of coastal erosion is happening faster and faster every year. And I think it's really important for Caymanians to understand that if housing on the beachfront is uninsurable, I think a lot of us that were working on the report were talking about insurability and how if we don't make changes, a lot of housing isn't going to even be insurable. And looking at the examples of other small island states and their adaptations for sea level rise, these things are very expensive. And right now we need to be putting in the proper regulations and infrastructure boundaries. And it takes a lot of money to build adaptive solutions. And right now, we're not putting in adaptive solutions whatsoever. And we're continuing, and other countries are spending way more to start adapting. And we haven't even started. We don't even have a climate change policy. I think it's surprising how much other small island developing states are doing and how much money they're investing into adaptive infrastructure. And I and everybody that worked on this report, we want to see Cayman doing this. We want to see Cayman preserved. This report was not about exiling to Scotland. It was about talking about the real issues and how we can overcome them, how we can adapt. And so we need to look at what other islands are doing and we need to take action. And that was the main purpose of the report. And it's surprising when you actually look into what other islands are doing, how much further along they are. And for the amount of economic growth we have, we need to be investing in this to sustain our future.
That's great. That actually leads to my next question, which you guys kind of already touched upon, but I think this one is going to be a little more streamlined, which is knowing what you know now, working on this report, what was like the hardest pill to swallow?
I feel like the hardest pill to swallow wasn't actually from learning the things from the report, but it was like the aftermath of what how people reacted to, because I didn't know how people were going to react to the report at all. And some of the messages I've gotten from people who've read either the press release or the recent newspaper articles on our report have been pretty eye-opening. How, although there's been a lot of people who are like excited for young Caymans actually talking about our future and trying to actually do something, there are a lot of people who are just plain out rejecting the whole idea of sea level rise and us potentially losing our homes. Kind of like that saying, an ostrich burying its head in the sand. And that was sort of I feel like that was the hardest pill to swallow, to say those people would, for lack of a better phrase, be left behind if they don't hop on this ticking time. I don't want to call it a bomb, but this train that's sort of like leaving, this boat that's leaving. I remember one kind of comment I got from someone very close to me is like, I'm glad that, and this was from my elder in the community, so it's typically the elders. I wonder if most of them hold this view, but it's great seeing the young people doing this. This is great. Good thing it has nothing to do with me. I won't be here to deal with any of that. So good luck, youth. And I was like, oh wow. I'm glad that you're supporting me, but at the same time, they're like, this is not my circus, not my monkey, sort of thing. So I was like, oh, okay.
I think that is a really common thing that we see these days, especially in Cayman, is people having the idea that, these things are going to happen past when they've gone and died. And, looking into this more and being more involved into sustainability, you see that, these things are not as far away from us as we may think they are. They're approaching right on our doorstep. So it takes everybody in the community to help get involved to mitigate these.
Exactly, and that's why I thought it was just like it's like a hard pill to swallow because we know this. We know that we need all hands on deck to make at least something salvageable, but increasingly it seems like that we're spending more time trying to convince people to help than actually finding solutions. Um, but yeah, that's my hard pill.
What I found difficult when writing this report, first of all, I want to say I was so grateful for the community that I had writing this report. I'm so grateful for everybody that worked on it because it wouldn't be possible if we didn't have the support from each other because it is a hard conversation and it's not supposed to be pleasant. So, of course, the whole thing was very upsetting. The fact that we're losing our island, we're losing our culture because of climate change and because of the decisions that are currently being made that are not favoring the preservation of Cayman culture. And definitely the hardest pill to swallow was knowing that I probably won't be able to have my future family grow up here. And people think that we're crazy for saying these things. But if you read the report, if you try to understand climate change from a holistic perspective, it's exactly what Rickeem was saying. It affects housing, it affects food, it affects our social services, it affects our economy. It will be affecting everything. And even if some houses remain from sea level rise, we will not have the same quality of life. And I think people don't understand that. And already people are unhappy with their quality of life. Not saying everyone. I'm saying it's not equal here. There is a economic divide and it can not really get better without action. And so I think that was the hardest pill to swallow. But again, I'm grateful for the community that we help each other through these hard conversations and we believe in each other and we believe in our action and we want to start these conversations. And I'm really proud of everyone that was involved because it's not easy to take the criticism and it's not easy to hear the negativity when it is already such a negative issue. It's sad, it's disheartening, but we don't want to talk about it to make things worse. This is so that we can make our lives better. We want a better Cayman.
I upon talking to some people post the release of the report, on the flip side of the negative spectrum of people's comments, I do see that it's starting that conversation that we wanted to have from this report, where people now, either within our age group, who are the younger generation or even the older generation, they're asking themselves questions like, should I buy a house? Should I buy land? Right? Is this like, we're all kind of programmed and trained and conditioned to, like, you buy your land, you buy your house, you raise a family, but now you have to think, is this something that I should continue to invest in Cayman, considering all the things that's been told from the report and where you follow the science? So people are definitely starting to come up with their own contingency plans, which is, yes, it's great that you're coming up with your contingency plan to go somewhere else, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to, come up with solutions to the current problems we have. Like, don't run away without trying first, essentially. Um, yeah, these are all great responses. Thank you.
So, how do you envision the recommendations outlined in the report being implemented? And what steps do you believe are crucial for the success of these steps?
Well, for I guess the mass migration aspect of it, migration in itself is a huge issue and it has its own set of problems and it's almost just as complicated as the climate crisis itself. It's not easy to be, identified as a refugee, and in our case we become like climate change refugees, and like what those stigmas you know cause to happen within like the host country that will potentially be receiving us, or like us as ourselves, the kind of mental trauma of losing our homes. What kind of mechanisms do we put in place to accommodate both peoples, is a very complicated and complex issue. So starting those pipelines of like how people are going to move from one place to another, say for instance before the worst case scenario, starting that before that happens, or even having the mechanisms in place for when that happens, is a thing that I think we need to start working on today, because obviously right now it looks like it's on the horizon. We're nice and we're safe now. We've avoided most dangerous storms, thankfully. I think this is a time we should really, really be buckling down and writing these things in stone. How will the UK accommodate us if that's a thing that can be pushed forward. So if we're asking about like how I envision these recommendations being implemented, I think we should start thinking of this, what do you call it, bilateral migration policy. I'd love to see that start being formed in some way, shape, or form within like our governments. Yeah, but I don't know. See, that's a huge thing, because I don't know how who is necessary to be in the room and how many people are necessary to be in that room for those kind of like huge projects. That project is as big as, like, say for instance, the port that they wanted to make. That's a huge national kind of policy, so how do you get that off the ground with the volatility of governments and whatnot? I don't know, but that's something that I really wish we could like kind of buckle down and do.
That's great. I just wanted to ask Rickeem, because I know you took the migration course. What is a bilateral migration strategy? Do you mind just elaborating?
Well, if I remember correctly, bilateral means like having two parties actually work together to get something done. So like when you have a bilateral treaty, two countries have written this treaty to get together. So like when we're talking about migration policy, there's going to be obviously a country that's going to be having people that are leaving, and then the host country that will be taking them. So me just saying a bilateral sort of like policy is just saying the UK, Cayman Islands governments hash this out, essentially in the laymanest of terms. That's basically what it means.
That's great. Thanks for explaining.
No worries. I hope I explained that right. If there's an expert listening, I'm sorry. Please.
Well, I just thought if I don't know what it is, people aren't gonna know what it is. Like, I have no idea. So I am a strong believer in collaboration and saving time by not reinventing the wheel. I think the climate change policy that was supposed to be enacted now, that hasn't been passed yet, that would be a great start, because for this country, we've needed a climate change policy for so long. I can't wait for it to be enacted, and I think that's just the beginning. What Rickeem kind of touched on in terms of storms, we're very vulnerable. This is supposed to be the predicted worst hurricane season on record, and where's our plan? We don't have a plan yet, and I think it starts with hazard management strategies, because we are vulnerable to earthquakes, hurricanes, storms, flooding, and there's so many things that we still need to get a grasp on in terms of that. I don't think we need to overcomplicate the report that we made. I think we need to focus on what's happening and what has been in delay, and start passing the things that are going to be actively helping us right now. And of course, we need to be thinking about the future. So the things that we're working on now, why are we not thinking 7 generations ahead? I think we should have started that way a long time ago. That's how it used to be. Things have changed. We used to be a community that prioritized sustainability and preservation of culture, and it's been slowly eroded. And I think we need to go back to our roots, and we just need to think about the future.
Yeah. I think something a lot of people who have briefly seen this report or stumbled across it have thought is, we're just immediately jumping to let's all get up and move to Scotland right now. But, what we really want to see as ambassadors is small things starting first. We want to see our government prioritize small moves for sustainability and conserving our future. We're not trying to say we all jump ship and leave. We're just trying to say that things need to start happening, or else that is what we're going to have to do.
Looking ahead, what do you hope will be the long-term legacy of this report, both in terms of policy changes and public awareness for the Cayman Islands and beyond?
I think Cayman has a unique positioning in, global international society. We have a lot of people interested in the Cayman Islands for various reasons. We have a global platform. I would love to see this report, or at least elements of this report, shared with others. I would love international collaboration in terms of helping us get to where we need to be to preserve our island. I don't think we need to work together as Caribbean nations because we have very similar issues, and I think there's a really big gap in communication and collaboration. So for me personally, I would love to see this report being discussed with other Caribbean nations. I would love to have conversations with other Caribbean nations. I think right now we're quite disconnected, and Cayman is a leader in some aspects, but not in the climate change and sustainability sphere yet. And I would love to see that.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. And honestly, I think I'm going to echo a little bit more of what Hayley said. I really want to see a lot more collaboration between, not only our Caribbean neighbors, but like the British Overseas Territories, because this is an issue that's going to essentially affect us all similarly. Most of us are small islands, and most of us are on the front lines of the climate crisis. So what we have sort of echoed in our kind of context in the Cayman Islands can easily be applied to any one of the other British, 14 British, well, we're one, so 13 British Overseas Territories. And honestly, with regards to public awareness, I see it already making a change. People are speaking about it, even if they don't agree with it. We were just supposed to start a conversation. And people, if they're going to speak about it with passion, that's what we want. So regardless of wherever it ends up in the zeitgeist or the public awareness or the public psyche, we just want it to be a conversation that's actually actively being had. And right now we're starting to see more of that. And that's essentially what we wanted. So I just want to see that being taken up, more and more and more and more. And reflected more, not only here locally, but regionally as well. And then back in the UK, which was like sort of one of the target audiences too.
Yeah, I think even if these conversations from the public are negative, at least people are expressing that they're not interested in an island-wide exodus. And having that lack of passion towards that is going to drive them to fight to keep us on the island. So hopefully, even if they don't like the idea we've proposed, that will inspire them to choose a different route.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Island Echoes, where we explored the rhythm of sustainability in the Cayman Islands.
If you would like to read the full Rising Tides Departing Shores report, you can find it on our website at sustainablecayman.org. If you'd like to ask us a question or propose a topic for our next episode, you can email us at ambassador@sustainablecayman.org.
For real-time updates and engaging content, you can also follow us on Instagram at sustainableky, on Facebook at sustainable.cayman and on TikTok at Sustainable Cayman.
Let's continue to echo the importance of sustainability throughout our beautiful islands. Until next time, stay curious, stay conscious, and stay connected with Island Echoes.